The key is to focus on discipline and not motivation. Motivation will come and go, but discipline is one of those things that leads to long-term habits being formed, which allows you to stay on track during the more challenging times.
I always love interviewing D8 Training's head trainer and founder, Neven Antic. He's not only the most disciplined person I know when it comes to training and nutrition, but he's also deeply committed to learning, researching, and staying ahead of the curve in health and fitness, all to deliver the best results for himself and his clients. That's exactly why Neven is the perfect person to talk to about training in winter. In this episode, he breaks down why staying consistent during the colder months matter, how to adjust your mindset and training intensity, what to focus on when it comes to pre and post workout nutrition, especially for women over 40 like me. If you want to stay strong, healthy, and energized this winter and avoid those common winter illnesses, this episode is for you. Welcome, Neven.
It's great to be back. I feel like it's been so long.
All the listeners were asking when you were coming on again, so here you are.
Nice. Those bribes that I put through to the clients seems to have paid off.
Definitely. Well, they all want to know, do we really need to work out in winter? Because it's getting cold out there. I'm not wearing bikinis, so can I rest during winter?
I love it. Straight to business, hey? Straight to the questions.
We've got to give the listeners what they want.
Absolutely. You need to train. I think skipping any season, whether it's winter, summer, or spring, is just going to allow you to fall back to bad habits. And in a way, you'll have to start from scratch. Fitness is something that we want to maintain throughout the year, as opposed to starting and stopping. And I'm a big believer you need to train all year round, not only in the way that we look at our bikinis, but obviously for the physical components of our health, but also our mental health aspects. We know the benefits training has for our mental health. So I think for that, it's actually really important, especially in wintertime, to stay on the routine and the habits that you put in place in other times through the year.
It is such a struggle coming out in winter and the motivation because it's cold. Why do you find that people tend to struggle?
Based on conversations with clients and what I've felt even with myself, I think it's a combination of a lack of sunlight, colder mornings, and more time indoors actually sap our energy. We tend to become more reactive instead of being proactive with the things that we do. And I think the best way to flip that is to get moving. People don't realize this, but action and movement actually creates more energy and more movement. So it's really important to keep that as part of our routines and our lives. And we may not always feel like that in the morning when it's colder. It's just one of those things that we just have to push through, because like I often say, is the hardest part is sometimes walking in through that door, because once you're here or for your workout, wherever it is, it's actually always something you're able to do. And I've never had a client complain at the end of the workout and say, hey, I wish I never came in today.
And I'm one of them. I often find it hard to come in, and then afterwards I'm always grateful that I came. What mindset shifts can help someone stay consistent with their training in winter?
The key is to focus on discipline and not motivation. Motivation will come and go, but discipline is one of those things that leads to long-term habits being formed, which allows you to stay on track during the more challenging times. So one, focus on the discipline, and that's something you just need to stay on top of. And then the second part is think long-term. Your future you is going to thank you because you've been able to stick to these things and thinking about the long-term as opposed to just that one workout. And then the third one is, and you're great at this, is setting mini goals. One session a week is a great win as opposed to not coming out at all. So you might have weeks where it's a little bit challenging, still continue to get that routine, because at least that way you haven't gone 2 weeks without coming for a session.
What you're really saying is, if I want that bikini body for summer, I need to train during winter.
That's exactly right.
And what about food before training? What do you recommend I eat or supplement with before a workout?
This also varies depending on the time of day that you're training. One of the big misconceptions, and probably something that maybe we can talk about here, is about earlier morning sessions. So a lot of our sessions are either 7 a.m. or 9 a.m. in the morning. And if you're working at those times, especially as a female, someone of your age, anyone over, I guess generally over 40, a lot of the research now is promoting making sure that we're getting at least 15 grams of protein before our workout.
Thanks. Now everyone knows my age. Over 40, 15 grams of protein.
That's right. So if you're doing a strength-based workout, like in the gym, 15 grams, a minimum of 15 grams of protein is sufficient. for what your body needs. If you're doing a higher intensity workout, so that could be going for a run or a really high intensity strength training class, then you probably want to introduce about 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrates as well. So make it a mix of the two. And generally you'll have that about 45 minutes to an hour before the workout, but you want to make sure that you're definitely getting in that protein before you start.
And this is for females or for both men and women?
The recommendations are still the same for men as well. Men aren't as sensitive to being in a fasted state as much as women, but the benefits of refueling for intensity and then recovery really outweigh the benefit of not eating anything beforehand. So it's really highly recommended for both to do. It's just that women are a lot more sensitive to being in a fasted state, so not eating any food before a workout. And quite often, a lot of ladies have just done that forever. They've worked out fasted because there was some research a while ago saying that it burns more fat. And there is a little bit of truth to that, but the reality is they find that their intensity drops off quite often. So even though you can probably do it in a fasted state, it doesn't mean it's the optimal way of doing it. So especially, once we hit those 40 and over, we really want to focus on that pre-meal before a workout.
Look, I know personally when I'm doing a 7 o'clock workout, I need to have at least a banana beforehand. Otherwise, I start to get head spins during the class.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You just downregulate your blood sugar in terms of having something to eat in your stomach. And then obviously the protein is there to help rebuild your muscle as you're kind of going through the workout. The reality is our bodies don't have the ability to store protein in our bodies. We don't have a storage of protein. Well, we do in a way, but it's actually existing muscle stores, which we don't want to break down a certain muscle to repair another part of the body. So unless you've got the dietary protein coming in from your food from the morning, you're going to basically be in a catabolic state, which means you're eating yourself to repair yourself. And that's counterintuitive to what we want because we're in the gym to build muscle.
I was actually listening to Dr. Stacey Sims. Have you heard of her?
Yes, I have. I may have suggested for you to check her out.
Yes, you did. Well, I actually listened to your suggestion. And one thing what she was saying with women is we are quite different to men. By eating before we work out, it means that our body's got that energy hit so that it doesn't go into that stress state, which actually helps us to lose that weight and achieve our goals.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think a lot of the recommendations in the past for training has always just been done on men. So a lot of the research studies have been done on men, and those principles were applied to females. Whereas a lot of the research being done now is looking at females and how they differ to men and what the better recommendations are. And we're finding a lot of this information now about the working out in a fasted state and why that is not as beneficial for us as in eating something beforehand. So yeah, definitely recommend for any ladies over 40 to, if they haven't really checked Stacey Sims out, I recommend having a look at her. She's got some fantastic information, not just on nutrition before and after workouts, but also around strength training principles. Not just Stacey, but there's a lot of other kind of influencers like Stacey who are really promoting strength training for women and the benefits that there are. As opposed to, if you look back in the 90s, it was more about cardio, more about being really thin and running, which we know is not beneficial for us as we age.
Yeah, she talks about that as women, why we need strength training, and the cardio doesn't play that benefit. And I love her tagline, women are not mini men.
Exactly.
And trust men to give us what they need. Thank goodness us women are coming out and researching. So we spoke about winter, it's colder, we spoke about what we eat beforehand. But what should I wear during a winter workout?
First of all, it has to be the latest style. It's got to be the latest model that just come out.
100% the D8 training new t-shirts, hey?
Correct, exactly. And then the latest Lorna Jane leggings or whatever else is in fashion, I'm sure that's really important. But on a serious note, you want to layer up. You want to have the ability to be warm at the start of the workout. And as your body starts to increase its temperature, you want to be able to easily take some of that clothing off. Oftentimes, we'll see clients come into the gym, and if it might be an early morning session, they'll come in and make comments like, oh, it's quite cold out there. And within 5 to 6 minutes, by the end of the warm-up, the layers have already come off and they're basically in their normal gym gear. So it doesn't take long, but it is something that's obviously you have a nicer feeling and just making sure that your muscles have the ability to warm up before you start to do a bit more intense.
Halfway through the session, we're asking for the fans again.
Correct.
In the middle of winter.
Exactly. Well, this morning we almost needed to put the heaters on in the morning, and then 2 hours later the fans are on. It doesn't take long.
How does the cold weather affect muscles, joints, and risk of injury?
So the first thing it does is it increases stiffness to the joints. So quite often, so we've had some clients who've had surgeries. They'll often talk about, oh, I had a knee surgery, 10, 15 years ago. And when it gets colder, I really feel it. So it increases that stiffness, especially for areas that you might have had previous injuries.
Is that old age, that stiffness?
A bit of that as well. So, and the older we get, obviously, the more we start to feel that. And it does that because it reduces blood flow to those muscles and it slows down the ability of your muscles to contract. That's why it's important to warm up, to allow those muscles to get warm, to get adequate, so we can actually contract our muscles quite intensely. So without a proper warm up, you do increase the risk of potential injury.
Should we warm up longer because it's winter?
I'll say yes and no in that one. It really depends on how you're feeling on the day, how cold it is, obviously. If it is a colder day and you're feeling a little bit colder than normal, then yes, spend a little bit more time warming up. Definitely don't skip it. Might be a few extra reps just to get things moving. And then, what I'd probably recommend is just easing off into those first work sets. It might be just building up the weights if you're going to be pushing weights in that particular exercise. So just building that up. And that's really the component of blood flow. We just want to increase blood flow to those working muscles. It's one of the best ways that I like around when you're treating with injuries. The key is to get a lot of blood flow into that area to help with the healing, to help with the repair. And in a way, it's also a foundation of what we do in the warm-up as well. Just get blood flow to the muscles, blood flow to the areas in preparation for those more intense working sets.
I heard as you get older that you should warm up longer as it minimises the risk of injury. Is this true?
Yes, I believe so. A really good example I see is often in our over 60s class. Some of our clients, they hit their best movement in a particular exercise on their third and fourth set. And it's almost like they've taken those first two working sets to kind of warm up into that movement, especially if they have like a pre-existing, say, knee injury, and we're looking at the depth of their squat. We find the first one or two are quite challenging, quite restricted in terms of their movement. And then as they kind of go through and lubricate that joint and grease that groove, then all of a sudden they're able to get deeper and deeper. So we almost do those first one or two working sets as a warm-up, additional warm-up for them. So yes, I'd highly recommend making sure you're nice and warm.
I find when I race my kids, I need to warm up and they're like, why are you warming up, Mum? And because they can just, off they go, bolt and sprint without a problem.
Yeah, exactly. That's sometimes a sign of how healthy you are to an extent. In some of our younger years, we should be able to have the ability to, just go out and start a sprint. But most of us don't have that because we need 5 minutes to warm up. We need to loosen up. We need to stretch out. And oftentimes it's just a sign that we lack good quality movement. I'm not saying you should just go out there and sprint now, but we should maybe have the ability to be able to build up to that over the years. And that's usually a sign of good training quality and good movement quality within your body. So not just focusing on being really strong, but also being flexible and mobile.
Jake and I will compare our step count. So Jake's our 9-year-old son, in case you didn't know. Well, I try to hit 10,000 steps a day. I find it beneficial for me. Whereas he'll come home from school and he's already at that 16, 17,000 steps a day, often hitting over 25,000 steps just because he's always constantly moving like an energizer bunny.
And again, there was that example before of movement creates more movement in a way. So they're constantly moving and they have the ability and they almost go all day and then they come at the end of the day and they go sleep and recover and repeat the next day. So I think it's a really good indication, example of why movement creates more movement. Whereas sometimes clients come in and they're like, oh, I'm a little bit tired. I feel like I need to have a week off. And I'll often say, try that. But see, usually at the end of that 1 week, they're actually not any better for it. Oftentimes they feel more lethargic and have less energy because they haven't created that movement. Because most of our jobs are sedentary and we're sitting down most of the time.
100%. Like I said, I try to hit 10,000 steps, and often with work and meetings, I might go a few days where I've only hit between 5,000 and 7,000 steps. My mood's worse. I feel more tired. I don't want to work out because I haven't been moving. But when I hit 10,000 steps consistently every single day, I'm happy to move and my energy is a lot higher.
100%. And there's a component of where the physical stress on our bodies by working out or walking is such a benefit to our mental health. We feel more calmer, we feel more relaxed, and we just have a better general sense overall.
Well, when I snapped at you the other day and I walked off, I was like, that was strange. And then I looked at my step count in the last 3 days and I hadn't hit my steps, which made me moodier towards you, though it was still your fault.
I didn't realize you snapped at me. You never snap.
Good answer. All right, the question that has been asked multiple times. After 3.5 years, why have you changed the D8 training warm-up?
As much as I'd love to say it's because of some new learning or evolution or science that I found, and part of it It was actually feedback we got from our recent survey. So we tend to put up a survey out randomly to clients, generally once a year or so, just to get their feedback. And a couple of the clients made suggestions around. I thought, it's probably a good idea to, revamp it and just change it up a little bit. And it's been interesting because often clients will still come in, and it's been 2-3 weeks now, and sometimes they'll come in and like, has there been a new warm up? Because most of the clients are self-sufficient in the warm up, so they're able to do it by themselves. So I often just let it go, and then they look at the board and they're like, oh, something looks different. So yeah, it's been good.
Glad to hear you take feedback on. Actually, I saw in the recent workout in the new adult cycle this week, you put double ab exercises based on the feedback you received. That was not fun.
It's an interesting area. We often get clients, they'll be like, oh, can we get more core exercises? For me, while core exercises are great, oftentimes you're getting lots of core by doing big compound movements, whereas people don't realize that. They want to feel that burn. So we do make changes, obviously, as paid based on feedback. We're glad we're able to, give the people what they wanted.
Yeah, well, my abs are still sore 2 days later. During a winter workout, what should people be mindful of doing during the actual workout in colder conditions?
Watch your form, especially in those first few sets. And we'll often say it anyway, don't rush, slow things down. Especially early on, your body might feel a little bit slower, and that's okay. Just take your time, work through the movements, use that first working set almost as an extra warm-up set if you need to, and just ease into it. You're better off taking it easy on the first 1 or 2 working sets as opposed to going all out, and then you might be hurting yourself or you might just aggravate those particular tendons.
So, for example, if I'm doing squats, instead of going and I can do them with 30 kilos, maybe start at 25, warm up, and then build it up.
Correct. Even at 20, just the first one, just make it really feel light. And most of us know our bodies fairly well. You just need to listen to it. Don't just force it, especially if you're feeling a little bit colder or it's been a little while since you worked out.
20 kilos will hurt my ego.
But you can do maybe 32 in the last set to make up for it.
Like that. And is intensity affected by the cold? Should we train harder or pull back?
I think intensity should still be high, but don't force it in the first 5-10 minutes. And that was a perfect example before. If you're using an exercise where, you're using a fairly heavy load, maybe don't just go straight to that top set straight away. Build your way up. I'm a big fan of ramping up my weight. So if I've got 3 sets and let's say we're going to hit 30 on the top set, it might be that I do 20, then 25, then 30 on the last one. So just be mindful of building up the intensity. Still hit the intensity, especially in your top sets, because by then you should be warm and ready to go. If you're not, something else is wrong.
If I'm not able to hit it by my 3rd set, what could be wrong?
It could be that you just didn't warm up adequately. It could be something else. Maybe you're tired or lethargic. It could be another component. It might not be the weather. It might have been that you haven't been recovered from your previous workout. You haven't slept well. You haven't maybe pre-fueled. You didn't have your 15 grams of protein and 30 grams of carbs before your workout, before you came in. So it could be a combination of things. Just make sure that it's not a repeat thing that it keeps occurring, because if it is, then maybe the way you're warming up or the way you're setting up your sets.
If I find it is a repeat thing?
Generally, I would recommend looking at it, speaking with a trainer, speaking with somebody who'll be able to give you some feedback on what it is that you're doing. Because there could be multiple things and it'll be hard for me to say exactly what it is.
So what's your take on cardio?
I think cardio is fantastic. I think the popularity around cardio 10, 15 years ago is probably a lot higher than what it is today compared to strength training. So I think there's been a lot more popularity around bringing up strength training. Really, the ideal situation would be to have a blend of both. I'm still a big fan for most of our clients is that they probably need more strength than they need cardio, just because most of them haven't done enough strength training. I like the idea of doing both. If you can, squeeze in some cardio in the winter times. If you don't prefer to work out outside, then find a way to make it work. It could be working out in a gym on a aerodyne bike or elliptical. So there's lots of different ways, or even a treadmill, obviously. Ideally, I'd prefer you to go outside for your workouts, for your cardio workouts if possible, just to get a little bit of sun exposure. But if that doesn't work because it's raining or it's wet or windy, whatever it is, then find a way to make it work.
And should I do more or less of it in winter?
It should be the same. Overall, you want to have a combination of both weights and cardio. But if you have a set schedule, and let's say that's 1 or 2 cardio workouts per week, try to adhere that through the winter time as well. Or if you can't, maybe if you were doing three cardio sessions in summer, then maybe scale it back to 2, but then do an extra gym session.
What about water and hydration? I tend to hydrate more in summer than I do winter, but should I be doing the same?
Yes. Just because you're not drenched in sweat doesn't mean you're not sweating. And things like heaters, dry air, and layered clothing actually all increase dehydration without you really kind of feeling it as sweat. Definitely keep up the water. And still even add in electrolytes. I'm a big fan of electrolytes. I think most of us don't get enough from our diets naturally. And it's such a simple supplement that we can use. and I would recommend using them all year round. You might find you may need a little bit more electrolytes in the summer times, especially if you're working out or if you're doing a lot of running outside, but I would still recommend adding them in, even in winter.
I was drinking water the other day and I felt like I couldn't get hydrated. And then when I added the electrolytes after one glass.
Yeah, exactly. And that's your body's way of saying, I need electrolytes, but it's not from the water. That's why it's a perfect example. Like sometimes when you just can't quench that thirst, it's actually the need for electrolytes.
We spoke earlier about what to eat before a workout. What should I eat after a winter's workout? I'm 40 now because you've told everyone my age. Might as well claim it. What do I eat if I want to prioritize building lean muscle mass?
So for you personally, and again, this is why I'd recommend listening to Stacey Sims, what we thought was the recommendation is actually different. The latest recommendations is eating at least 40 grams of protein, natural protein sources like whole food, or protein powder if you need to supplement. So, but 40 grams is a little bit more than what most people would think is needed.
That's heaps. I'm smaller than the average. Should I still eat 40 grams?
Correct, yes. Someone of your size should eat 40 plus, right? So the older we get, the more we actually need to eat because we become resistant to the ability to turn over muscle. So we actually need to eat more of it. And this is what the latest research is showing. So, and that's very much a lot higher than what people would expect.
So this is after a workout. Say I'm working out at night. I tend to have dinner before I go to a workout and I'll eat my 40 grams of protein before then. Should I still eat it afterwards?
It depends. If you've already eaten 40 grams and it's pretty close to the workout, you could probably get away with just having maybe a shake afterwards. I'd probably still recommend the shake just to bump up your protein intake. One of the other key components is protein intake throughout the day. So it just depends on how your protein is broken up. So if you are working out quite late, then maybe just a protein shake at the end will suffice. In saying that, for most people who are working out a bit earlier, 40 grams is what you'll be recommending afterwards. That's from a protein perspective, so 40 plus. But on top of that, you also want to eat some quality carbs. From a carbs perspective, you want to be eating around 0.3 grams per kilogram of body weight, which for somebody who weighs about 60 kilos is about 20 grams of carbs.
Did you just calculate that now?
Yes, in my head.
All right, so that's for women. What about men?
It's a little bit different. One of the keys I should say with women is that's within an hour of working out. And that's where we thought that window was a lot longer. But ideally, you want to get that 40 grams of protein plus 20 grams of carbs within 1 hour of working out.
So let me get this straight. So if I'm a woman and I'm working out, which I am, I need to eat at least 15 grams before the workout and then afterwards 40 plus grams of protein.
Correct, yes. Yeah. And then you add in your carbohydrates depending on what type of workout it was and also what you're trying to get with your diet as well.
So I tend to eat my dinner before the workout and not eat. So should I actually eat my dinner after the workout?
Ideally, in a perfect world, I'd probably recommend half-half, whereas, you'd have half of it beforehand, especially if you're eating out really close to your workout. Sometimes you can just feel really heavy in your stomach, and we often get clients come in like, oh, I shouldn't have eaten so much before I worked out because your body hasn't had the time to digest it. So ideally, you're eating something a bit lighter before your workout, or you're giving yourself at least 1 to 2 hours beforehand. So the most important thing overall is going to be the total dietary intake throughout the day. Now, there is obviously some components around how late we're eating, but most of our clients, I would think, would be waking up between 6 to 7. So it's not like that they're waking up 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. and then eating and going straight to bed.
And what about men? Is it the same for men?
Yeah, for men, it's slightly different. Men still need the protein and carbs, but because their hormonal shifts aren't as steep, their meal timing can be a little bit longer. So they have up to about 2 to 3 hours after a workout to get the nutrition in, whereas with females, we want to have that within that 1 hour window.
So in winter, I tend to go for heartier meals and not eat as many salads as I do in summer. Should we be eating more or less when it's cold?
You don't need to eat less, but you should probably eat smarter. Heartier meals sometimes can mean increased calories. So you just need to understand what your body requires and then that you're eating relatively about what you need. And warmer meals are fine. And I think just balance them. Think for volumizing types of foods that are still hearty. Things like stews, soups, roasted vegetables, and slow cooked meats. They're all highly volumizing foods without the large amount of calories that you might get in a large pasta.
Have I told you about my pasta hack? I'll tell you. What I tend to do is I put a layer of cabbage and I warm it up in the microwave so it sort of steams it and softens it, and then I put pasta on top so it's less pasta, and then with the sauce. I'm still getting pasta, but not as much.
And you're volumizing with the cabbage, which is fantastic. That's such a great little hack. Where did you learn that?
It might have been from you. Winter is atrocious for us all getting sick and ill. What are your top tips to stay healthy while training consistently through winter?
I think the first one is layer up. We mentioned that before. Have some additional layers of clothing that you can easily take off. Fuel up before your workouts. Get those protein in and carbohydrates to high intensity meal. Definitely refuel post workout. And if you're a female, within that 1 hour time frame. And your standard other components will be get good sleep. You want to eat immune supporting foods as well. And stay consistent. I think movement supports your immune system. So it's important to still stress our bodies with training and with cardio to allow us to be more resilient with the colder periods. And I think sometimes you challenge yourself. Maybe it is still take a cold shower occasionally, or go outside in the a little bit more of the cold. Expose your body to a little bit of external stress that you may not usually, because your body will generally respond and get stronger from it.
Right, so what's one thing people tend to overlook when training in winter?
I think for me, it's always just being consistent with it. Oftentimes, I look for opportunities to use things as an excuse. Oh, it's cold, I'm not going to go train. But in fact, that's probably the more important time to actually be consistent with it. So I think it should be no different than any other warmer times of year. And don't worry about the whole workout. Just focus on starting. Once you start, you'll be fine. It's just walking in through that door and just making yourself get there.
Did I tell you about our rapid fire session?
I've heard about it and I've seen it on the podcast.
So here we go. 5 questions and quick rapid fire responses. Who's your favorite fitness influencer?
I think more lately, it's actually probably Stacey Sims. She'll be definitely one of my favorites up there, especially when it comes to women's health. And number 2, just as a bonus, is probably JJ Virgin. I really like JJ Virgin. A lot of her nutritional stuff is really good. And I've really loved what Stacey's added to it from the strength component and then around that workout period. So they're my top 2.
Both women.
Yeah, if we're talking about the women's health and women's strength training, I think it's fantastic. But I think it also relates really well to kids training as well.
So what's your book recommendation for fitness?
Old-timer classic book that I've always really enjoyed in the past is called Dinosaur Strength. It's a really old book about classic styles of strength training and the importance of that. And I remember I read it when I was like 19, 20, and it always still stood out with me. So yeah, there you go, Dinosaur Strength.
What's your favorite exercise in the gym?
For myself personally, or for me, for putting clients through?
For you personally?
Good question. I probably like more bodyweight style exercises, but adding load or weight to it. Something like a dip has always been one of my favorites. I think dips and heavy chin-ups are probably 2 of my favorites.
What's your least favorite exercise?
It usually relates around legs. I probably would say, similar to probably a lot of other clients, is Bulgarian split squats. I love the feeling I get from them, but they're also so physically and mentally draining too, especially once you get heavier loads. They're quite challenging to do. So anytime you're doing more than 2 to 3 sets, it can really get really challenging. Great exercise, but very challenging.
Is that why you put it in for your clients?
Because most of the time, if they go to the gym by themselves, they often won't do it. When they do it here, they'll do it. I had a client who sometimes comes to me for one-to-ones, and then I give him a program, he does it at the gym. He was doing a core exercise, which was really challenging for him. And I go, you should do these as part of your gym workout. He goes, no way, they're too hard. I only do them because you're watching me.
That's one of the reasons why one-on-one training helps. Lucky last question in the rapid fire section. What's one tip that you recommend everyone should do in relation to their health and fitness?
I would say strength training. Get at least 2 sessions a week. If you're not currently doing it, 2 sessions, work up to 4. 2 to 4, I tend to find is a sweet spot for most people, depending on your availability and your goals.
Should you train every day, strength training?
Well, if you're only doing 4 sessions a week, you can split that up how you want across the week. I tend to find, in a perfect world, a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday might be ideal because you have a break in between. But we never live in a perfect world. So if you have to and you have to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I think that you're still going to get a better outcome than not.
What about training 7 days in a row?
I think if you're going to train 7 days in a row, the challenge becomes is you're probably not going to be able to push intensity hard every day. So then it might be that you do 3 to 4 intense workouts and the other 2-3 days are either cardio workouts or they're lighter, there might be more mobility type exercises.
Hey, this is great, Neven. You provided so many tips. I was secretly hoping that you would come in and say you don't need to train during winter. Where can people find you if they've got more questions or they want to follow your journey?
So just reach out by email, info@datraining.com.au, or jump onto our Instagram and just reach out. We're always happy to help and meet new clients.
So they can send you a DM on your Instagram @D8Training.
Definitely.
Or come join us in the gym. Lucky last, any motivational message you'd like to share for those tempted to hibernate instead of move this winter?
we're not bears. We're not really built to hibernate. We've just got to continue to move and grow and adapt to our situations and scenarios. Continue to move, challenge yourself. And if you find you're struggling to do it by yourself, get some help. Find a personal trainer or train with a friend. You tend to find that if you find a friend and you're able to stick with that, your motivation is going to be a lot higher.
Another brilliant episode with Neven Antic. My 3 top takeaways were: prioritize your warm-up, especially during winter. Gradually build intensity instead of jumping straight into heavy sets. Fuel your body right. As a woman in my 40s, I need to make sure that I get at least 15 grams of protein pre-workout and then refuel within an hour post-workout makes a big difference. And lastly, discipline over motivation. Consistency is the key this winter. Movement really does create energy, especially when you're feeling lethargic. If you know someone who needs a little extra push to stay active through the winter months, please share this episode with them. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us reach more people. Until next time, dominate your life.